Whoso shall offend one of these little ones, which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hung about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depths of the sea.
5 children have been rescued from a sex trafficking operation in the Phoenix area. The FBI said the rescue was part of a nationwide sting that they conduct every year. One suspect has been taken into police custody. 31 other people were arrested, suspected of trying to have sexual contact with children across the valley. In 2022, more than 200 victims were found as a result of Operation Cross Country, including 17 victims in our area.
And listen, this video is not for children. We're gonna touch some sensitive stuff today. I'm just gonna show you on the surface how serious of an issue this is. And I don't know why the church is not preaching against this. We talk about a number of things. Why is this subject not on top of our discussions? Anyway, I could say a lot. Let's begin by reading news. This is AP. We are told fact-focused claim that more than 300,000 migrant children are missing, lack context. Report noted more than 291,000 unaccompanied children had not, as of May 2024. These numbers are way up there now. And we are told we receive a notice to appear in court. About 32,000 unaccompanied children got a notice to appear but failed to show up for immigration court hearing. So now some of their concerns have been what's going on with these children. Now we're gonna listen to, in part, to J.J. Carroll before Congress talking about this matter. It's crazy to me how do I say this? The politicians don't even care so much about this matter. They don't really care. That's not a major concern, but it should be. Take a listen.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the evil of child trafficking caused by the open border policies under President Joe Biden and his administration. I served in the United States Border Patrol for 24 years until I retired as a deputy patrol agent in charge in San Diego sector. I worked under 5 presidential administrations, and only one president secured the border, President Donald Trump. Border Patrol agents went from working and being supported by the greatest border president in American history to the worst, President Joe Biden. My last year in the Border Patrol was Joe Biden's first year in office. On his first day in office, I watched in disbelief as 94 executive orders cascaded down from Washington, D.C., obliterating every immigration policy that had been provided the most secure border in America's history. Border Patrol agents were forced to carry out unconstitutional orders that violated every law in the Immigration Nationality Act. President Biden, through Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, created policy out of thin air, ignored federal immigration law, and facilitated the largest mass invasion into America that the world has ever seen. The United States of America will have spent hundreds of billions of dollars in 4 years to fund the needs of over 50 million illegal aliens that populate our nation. Between 1 in 6 and 1 in 7 residents in America is an illegal alien. America has suffered the greatest demographic shift in modern history. After serving in the United States Border Patrol for 24 years, spending a year researching and writing a best-selling book entitled Invaded, The Intentional Destruction of the American Immigration System, and filming 2 documentaries, I state with complete certainty that Biden, Harris, and Mayorkas intentionally, strategically, and purposely weaponized illegal immigration and used it as a tool to fundamentally transform America. Inside this invasion, the unspoken evil of child trafficking, and more specifically, child sex trafficking, has flourished. At the end of this current administration, the number of children trafficked will have grown to over 550,000 unaccompanied alien children known as UACs. This horrific number of children will have been arrested, released into America, and then lost. To put this into context, during President Trump's last year in office, Customs and Border Protection arrested 30,557 UACs who were accounted for and not lost. Conversely, in the first year of Biden's presidency, CBP arrested 147,975 UACs, most of which are unaccompanied for and lost. In 2023, Congressional Hearings Health and Human Services Javier Becerra and Director of Office of Refugee Resettlement Robin Marcos forced to admit that their agency had no contact with over 85,000 UACs. They were lost. What did DHS, HHS, and ORR do to correct this humanitarian disaster? Nothing. In fact, all three agencies created further policies and procedures to increase the efficiency of moving UACs from the border to the interior of the United States to unknown and unvetted sponsors. Unaccompanied alien children were being handed off to total strangers. Then they disappeared into the darkness of labor and sex trafficking. In fact, a year later, in August of 2024, the Inspector General, with oversight over DHS, issued a report stating the number lost UACs was not 85,000, it was over 320,000. My business partner, Ryan Matta, and I spent 6 months traveling across America, filming a documentary titled, "What is Treason Trafficked?" The evil of child sex trafficking is difficult to digest and understand. However, after conducting numerous interviews with officers, agents, and whistleblowers from every alphabet agency and department, it was made clear to us that the federal government knowingly and actively facilitated these criminal acts. After several exhaustive months of filming, interviewing, and then editing this documentary, I state without reservation that the United States federal government is the world's largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history. The probability that thousands of these UACs are being raped at this very moment is 100%.
You heard those words. That is a topic that needs to be discussed. We're talking about little children. Friends, heartbreaking. 2024 trafficking person report. And what they're all saying, friends, these numbers, we're talking about 27 million people are exploited for labor, services, and commercial sex traffic. And the report is showing about 27% of those are children, which is disturbing. Children account for 27% of all human trafficking victims worldwide, and 2 out of 3 child victims are girls. We talked about 300,000. That number is over 500,000, we are told. Federal analysis, nearly 400 accompany minor placements. When they say accompany minor, they're really talking about children under the age of 18. But the open border makes it possible to go on. It's not happening by chance. This is a $150 billion industry. It is massive. It is huge. And it's crazy to me. You don't hear much about this. You have to go look for it. You have to go look for it. It's not preached. It's not talked about. It's not addressed. President, chief ministers won't touch this. And I'm saying, why not? Why not? Why not? Why isn't this part of the message for calling sinners to repentance and protecting the lives of those individuals? I don't understand why. Anyway, that's why I'm talking about it. Let's move on. Listen to this.
More about this case is Lieutenant Chris Oliveras, a spokesperson for the Texas Department of Public Safety. It is always good to see you. Thanks so much for making the time tonight.
Great to be with you, Natasha. Good evening.
And you actually first shared this video of this abandoned 4-year-old little girl. Can you tell us anything about where she may be now and also what happened to the smuggler?
Well, I mean, first off, Jorge has been doing some great reporting. And actually, I shared that video because, I want the American people to see the impacts of this current border situation that we've been in for the last 3+ years and how it impacts unaccompanied children that are coming across that border. I think just by that phone call alone, hearing the mother, if it is the mother, in fact, that's another thing too, is that we don't know exactly, who the person is behind that phone call, if it is a mother or a legal guardian, whoever it may be. But it's all too common now. It's becoming more a common occurrence now, where we're starting to encounter more unaccompanied children. That little girl, she's still in, federal custody right now with U.S. Border Patrol. And after that, they turn over to Health and Human Services. And then from there, we don't know exactly where they end up. We never know, and it's kind of even hard for me to even say that as a police agency in Texas that, we don't even know where these children end up. All we do know is that the brief moments that we have with these children on the border, it's very brief. All we can do as a state police agency is try to talk to these children, see if there's any signs of abuse or exploitation, or if a child makes an outcry that they've been abused on their journey to the United States. But for the most part, other than that, we turn these children over to Border Patrol, and then from there, we don't know exactly where they end up.
And the smuggler has been arrested?
Well, this particular case, this 2-year-old, there was no smuggler involved. These children came across, I think in that particular group with that 2-year-old that you showed that video of, there were 60 that came across that day, 60 unaccompanied children. Now, we had multiple cases after that. We actually had a 10-year-old little boy from El Salvador on Thanksgiving morning that was brought across by a smuggler from Mexico and was left abandoned and the child was lost. Luckily, one of our state troopers was there to able to recover that child. And also just this past weekend on Friday, there was a 5-year-old little girl that we actually were able to capture on a camera image where a smuggler was bringing the little girl across the river and then was then given to another smuggler, which we were able to arrest that smuggler. So we've had multiple events during this week involving unaccompanied children, and it really shows the inner workings of how these criminals are operating, and also how some of these family members, if they are family members in fact, how they will even allow their child to make this long, precarious journey to the United States at the hands of criminals. I mean, I couldn't see myself doing that with my own child. I don't see anybody else can do that, but they've been put in a situation right now that they're desperate. They got to get their children across the border. So the only way they can do that is by paying a criminal smuggler to get them across.
Yeah, and it was an emotional phone call. The woman claiming to be the mother, saying that she believed hiring smugglers to bring her daughter here would be safer than leaving her in Honduras. You know, to your point, you say that Texas agents, just Texas, have encountered more than 140 unaccompanied children in just the first 3 days of the week. Right. How young are some of these unaccompanied children, and why is this happening more? Why now?
Well, the children that we've come across, I mean, the ages have ranged from 2 all the way to 17. And the reason why I believe we're seeing more of an influx of unaccompanied children, because if we go back and look at with the current administration, whatever agreement they made with Mexico to get the numbers down, they've been able to manage the numbers since January. But with that, there is no safety mechanisms, there is no protocols in place to protect unaccompanied children. That's why we're seeing an influx of unaccompanied children coming across that border, because they will, in fact, at some point get released. And I think that's where we look at, you know, the dangers behind that and who's involved with these criminal organizations that are bringing these children across. I can't even imagine, as I said, you know, just seeing some of those photos from the mother. There are other children involved in that stash house, and we know how stash is, how they operate. Very poor conditions. Sometimes there's no running water, electricity, food.
These are some of the facts that we are talking about when it comes to the situation. It is a lot worse than we thought, at least a lot worse than I thought. We are talking the industry, the annual global profits for forced labor and forced sexual exploitation have risen to an estimate $236 billion, friends, according to ILO official report. So there is a lot of money being made trafficking these children. So the open border behind the scenes is children being trafficked into labor, forced labor and forced sexual, and they're becoming sex slaves. That's just what's going on. That's just what's happening, friends. So these are some of the facts that you need to know about. This is Tom Holman, who has been appointed as the border czar, who is talking about this issue as well. So you can look at the political side of the thing and miss the mark of what needs to be fixed here. It's not just we need to close the border, but what I'm saying is there's a serious child trafficking business going on in this country, and it's impacting the lives of so many children. We're talking about over 300,000, in some cases 500,000. So 300 to 500,000 children are being trafficked in American homes today. In some cases, they're being found either already been put to death. In some cases, they've never been recovered. And I'm going to show you where some of these children are probably are. And at the end of this video, listen.
Look, I want to get to this. I know your focus has been on children. There are a huge amount who are missing and exploited. Migrant children under the Biden-Harris administration. And according to an August DHS report, the Biden-Harris administration lost track of more than 300,000 migrant children. Headlines from as far back as last year have been calling out this problem. Former acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf put it this way.
The Trump administration is probably going to have to initiate a pretty large program to find the over 330,000 children that the Biden and Harris administration has lost in the immigration system. We have a child smuggling and trafficking crisis because of the policies of this administration. And you've got to take steps to reduce that and disencourage those children to come across the border to put their lives in the hands of cartel members. You can't just simply sit back.
And look, we have seen the DHS secretary in front of Congress in the last year or so, and they were trying to put forth, well, there are 80 to 85,000 of those children that they know the whereabouts of. First of all, how do you lose 300,000 people who may or may not be legal in this country and are underage? I mean, that just seems unfathomable.
Like Secretary Mayorkas is an embarrassment to the position he holds. Under this administration, more than 500,000 children have been trafficked into this country, and this administration released them to unvetted sponsors. They stopped the DNA program to make sure these were actually family members. They cut the vetting down to a minimum. Why? Because they were more concerned about overcrowding. Because overcrowding, they're worried about the optics of the crisis. If there's no overcrowding, there's no problem. There's no border crisis. So release these children at record pace. HHS Secretary Becerra bragged on how quick they release these children. So you're right. They can't find over 300,000. President Trump is committed to this. He's got 3 rails. So number one, we're going to secure that border. At the same time, we're going to do a mass deportation operation. And the third rail is President Trump's committed to finding these over 300,000 children and saving them. Because based on my 3.5 decades of this work, many of these children are sex trafficking today. Many of these children are in forced labor. Matter of fact, we found many in forced labor. And many of these children are living with predators. President Trump is committed to trying to locate these 300,000 children and get them back to their families and save their lives. But it's going to be difficult. Children don't have a digital footprint. They don't have credit cards. They don't pay bills. They don't have a driver's license. So it's going to be tough to find them. So we got to find these so-called sponsors and find out what the hell they did with these children. But President Trump's committed to trying to find every one of these children and saving them.
There are several places out there that are working to make a difference when it comes to the situation. It's not just the political side of the thing. There are many Christian organizations. Tim Tebow does have one of them. And I think Hope for Justice is one of them as well. OurRescue.org is another one. So I'll link these places underneath for any way you can support and pray for them. It will be great. Be part of the solution, we are told. Now, this is Layla. Layla, I guess Michael Wade, her name is. She has been on a mission to take down Pornhub. And what she is discovering is that many of these children are being used for the purpose of, you get it, the P word. That's something you're not supposed to say on YouTube, by the way. But here's the thing. That is one of those things. 80% of the dark web visit relate to pedos study finds. So the dark web. So somewhere on the dark web, you will find these children. So that's a thought on Pornhub.
So from day one, when we realized that Pornhub was not a porn site, it was a crime scene infested with videos of real sexual crime. And the crime that gets distributed, it's one thing for a victim to be raped. But when that's filmed and then uploaded and then distributed for profit and pleasure to millions of users per day, they call it the immortalization of their trauma, where they'll never be able to get over that because it's going to get just like the sadistic game of whack-a-mole. They just have to keep finding it and begging and trying to take it down and again and again. And victims of this kind of abuse, we call it image-based sexual abuse, all the way from child rape to adult rape and trafficking and what we used to call revenge porn. They have a 50% ideation rate for suicide. So this is really a life and death issue. And so we felt from the beginning that the call to action here was to shut down Pornhub because we felt like that was, severe harm demands severe consequence.
They had videos of some of these kids. We're talking about some from the age of 3, by the way. I don't want to gross you out. There's been cases we're talking about here. Here's a list of the age. Look at that. 3 to 6 years old, 14, 7 to 10 years old. These are some of the numbers we are talking about as far as age is concerned. We're going to listen to a quick video from the author of this piece, which is The Children of Pornhub. There he is on CNN. There it is right there. So let's take a listen to this because he's going to share some thoughts on that as well. Because they're trying to find different ways to stop this from happening. So that's one of those areas. We know there's much more going on, but it's one of those areas where you can somewhat mitigate the damage and the way these children are being abused as a result of them being trafficked in this country. So Here, listen to this piece here from CNN.
I have to say it's an alarming article, but everybody watching this should read it because it is excellent. In your article, you write, the world has often been oblivious to child sexual abuse, from the Catholic Church to the Boy Scouts. Too late, we prosecute individuals like Jeffrey Epstein or R. Kelly, but we should also stand up to corporations that systematically exploit children. With Pornhub, we have Jeffrey Epstein times 1,000. Talk us through what you unveiled in this investigation, sir.
Sure. Well, Becky, first of all, I don't think many people realize just how big a company Pornhub and the holding company that owns it, MindGeek, how big they are. Pornhub has more visitors than Netflix. It's one of the 10 most visited sites in the world, more visitors than Amazon. And, let's be clear that most of the pornography on this site does involve consenting adults. It's a minority of the videos that are problematic, but a minority of millions and millions of videos is deeply problematic. And, I saw, this isn't about porn, this is about rape and about sexual abuse of children. And on that site, there are videos of unconscious women whose rapists touch their eyeballs to show that they are completely unresponsive as they're being assaulted. There are videos of young children. One of the people I spoke to was a girl who at 14 years old had her life completely disrupted when naked videos of her were put on Pornhub, and she was an A student. She ended up leaving school, self-medicating, attempting suicide twice. This is something that large corporations should not be able to get away with.
Yeah, I mean, this is just part of that story. I can tell you this is so much worse than this. This is just a little segment. I felt the need to make this video to advocate for these young, in the hope that not only God's people can pray, but finding ways to get involved and be engaged and be aware of how serious of a thing the devil is up to. It's no joke, and this should be discussed. It should be addressed. It should be called out. But I could say a lot more, and this is why I started by reading this passage here. When it comes to innocent, young, especially inexperienced people, children, we are told that God doesn't play. There will be some serious judgment and consequences for those individuals as well. Friends, keep this matter in your prayer. The websites are posted below this in the description of this video. And also advocate and pray for these youngs and keep an eye on your children. Anyway, friends, thank you for listening once again. Have a good one. Bye.